Nice. We see your shirt. Yay.
You reminded me this morning when we did the test that I had one too, and I should wear it for today. So,
Yay. So good to see you, and good morning from here, good evening from where you are. Yay. Okay. Wonderful. Do you want me to do a quick, I think you should do the introduction yourself again. Okay, a quick introduction again, because we have a couple of new students today, and today we have students, high school students from different high schools. Okay, so there's students from different high schools, and the elementary school kids are not here. So
okay.
in case you're wondering, so all these are high school levels and above, and then also a few college students who are graduates from our high school, and they're back here to help with the camp.
Wonderful. Oh, fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah, before I get started, since I am in a different location, is the audio and the video okay? It's not choppy or hard to understand?
It's not choppy, it's perfect.
Oh, good. Fantastic. Okay.
Okay, let's turn the volume up. Okay, could you say a few words again?
Sure. Testing 1, 2, 3. Good? Better?
Very good. Okay. So I'll hand over the time to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Great to see you again. If you were there last night, good to see you. And I will go ahead and pull up some slides just to make sure that you can see those as well. Give me 1 second. Let's see. So are you seeing my slide deck?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, let me go to full screen. How's that? Okay?
Okay.
Great, thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Oxenford, Director of Community Engagement at KIMBER. And just to give a little bit more background about who I am, so you know who you're talking to today. I know I got to speak with you, some of you last night, but just by a refresher. So I work for an organization here in Pennsylvania called KIMBER, the Keystone Initiative for Network-Based Education and Research. It is Pennsylvania's statewide research, education, and community network. So we're one of about 44 other statewide research and education networks across the United States that provide advanced networking and telecommunications services and educational programming and support to our member communities. We are a nonprofit, member-based organization, and as I said, we provide that next generation broadband connectivity to what we call community anchor institutions. So that's higher education, K through 12, healthcare, hospitals, libraries, museums, zoos, aquaria, so all sorts of organizations that have a research and education focus, not so much on the commercial side of things. We were formed about 10 years ago. We did receive funding through a federal grant, about $99.6 million to build that network in Pennsylvania. And we do own and operate that 1,800-mile fiber optic network. So I did put a map up so that you could see that. I don't think I had that this morning, but I thought you might want to see just the geography of Pennsylvania and where the network runs across the state. So I think we covered that. So before KIMBER, I actually worked at an organization called Magpie, and that was based at the University of Pennsylvania. It had a very similar mission to KIMBER and worked on a regional basis in providing advanced network connectivity and services to education and research organizations. I did serve on the board of directors for an organization called PACE, the Pennsylvania Council for International Education. And I worked in the networking and telecommunications department at the University of Pennsylvania for many, many years. I served as co-chair of the Internet 2 Teaching and Learning Special Interest Group. I worked on an event and a program called the Mega Conference, which was at its time the world's largest and longest video conference event around the world. And we got together for 24 hours and brought people together using video conferencing from around the world to present to each other. And I was part of the team that worked on that for many years. I was also the co-founder and organizer, along with some colleagues of mine, of an event called Mega Conference Junior, which took the mega conference model and essentially opened it up for students in what we call K through 12 education. So kindergarten through 12th grade here in the United States. And that event really was the same as the mega conference, but we wanted to put the power in the hands of the students, in the hands of the students who were participating in the event, so that they were running the show and doing all of the scripts and all of the programs and helping to organize and lead both the technology and the video conference coordination with schools around the world, but also the content of the event and the different programs and presentations that we heard from during, excuse me, the Mega Conference Junior. I also worked on several projects, including one called the Remote Instrumentation and Virtual Labs Content Carnival, where we used video conferencing to make remote instruments and virtual labs available to students and to create awareness about these resources, working with the researchers and the project leads to expose educators and students to these resources that were available to them. And I've worked with many other partners and organizations on planning and implementing these types of projects, and especially using video conferencing and advanced networking. And I say all that just so that you know who you're talking to today, but also to tell you that I am not an educator. So I'm not a teacher like your wonderful teacher there, but I've had exposure and experience in working in this community and the sort of intersection of technology and education. So I wanted to just put that out there in full disclosure so that you all know who you're hearing from today. So with that background, I wanted to share with you some of my thoughts about why the world needs youth leaders, and in my opinion, perhaps now more than ever before. I think all of you probably are aware of some of the major global challenges in our world today. We can talk about some of these, but there are some pretty significant issues facing our planet and our world. And I know you're all very active in working within the community to share your thoughts and ideas as well about how we can solve some of these issues. But these are very pressing issues, and they need attention by communities of all ages and all types. There's also something that I think about in the realm of grand challenges. So we have the issues that need immediate attention, but there are also grand challenges ahead. We are entering a whole new era of sort of unprecedented territory with the intersection of technology and the advancement of our societies. And we need young people and people of all ages working together to really find the answers to these challenges and to pursue them jointly. Globalization, obviously, is another factor for why it's so important to have youth leaders. There's so much happening now, and again, with my lens as a technology person, being so connected through the internet and advanced networking and video conferencing like we're doing here tonight, that's so easy now. Back many years ago, even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it just wasn't this easy to do video conferencing. It took hours and hours of testing and planning, and that's what we did. And now it's as easy as firing up a web browser and using your technology to connect with other parts of the world, to understand what's happening in places that you might never have visited or been able to connect with before. So there's lots of factors around globalization that are really impacting the need for youth leaders. And then the other trend that I wanted to sort of mention was our aging society. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but this is a huge factor of why it's so important, perhaps now more than ever before, to have youth leaders helping to guide solutions and guide conversations around some of these global issues and grand challenges. So if I asked you to respond what your most pressing global issue was in the room there, I might imagine that it would be perhaps on this list. And certainly one of my biggest global issues and major concerns is our climate crisis. So I wasn't planning to do this poll, but can you show me by a raise of hands, how many of you think that our global climate crisis is the #1 issue facing our world today? Okay, so I can't see everyone, but I see enough hands that I agree with you. For me, that is our #1 issue as well. And I don't mean to skew the conversation. All of these global issues need attention, and they need thinking behind them, and people working together to help solve them. But our climate crisis is very immediate, and to my mind, the #1 issue. And there are many of these issues, and I don't certainly list them all here, but some others are overpopulation in certain parts of the world, food security, how many communities and societies and groups of people still are going hungry and are not feeling secure about where they will find their next meal. This is a huge global issue, and it also has obvious immediate impact and ramification. The threat of global warfare. We've seen recently, the early possibilities of how these things could escalate very, very quickly. Government accountability, transparency, and corruption. In the United States, we're about to undertake a series of impeachment procedures this week for our leader. And so these are major global issues that impact societies around the world, concerns around government accountability and transparency and corruption, and not just in the United States, but elsewhere as well. And they're all interconnected, and we are all interconnected. And so what happens in Taiwan impacts us in the United States, and what happens here in the United States impacts you all as well, as you all know. So what are some global grand challenges? I put these on here, and to my mind, the distinction is that the global issues are more threatening, and they are more immediate, and they are more concerning. The global grand challenges are those that we have an opportunity to use technology or to solve some major challenges in new and sort of exciting ways. And to my mind, some of these include advancements in quantum computing, the use of artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things. How will these trends impact our world? Cybersecurity, which is a huge, huge challenge for everyone, from state and local government to individual users to the financial world to education. There's so many things that are on the global stage that have cybersecurity ramifications and implications, and we need skilled workforce to solve these challenges and to work together around issues of cybersecurity. Inclusivity and equality across gender and other areas. This is a key challenge, and we have the opportunity to work together on exciting ways around inclusivity and equality. And global health. There are so many advancements in healthcare, and again, with the combination of technology, that I think we have some really unique opportunities to solve some major health concerns together in new and exciting ways. And of course, the list goes on and on. These are just a small sampling of some of what I might consider the grand challenges. So let's talk a little bit about globalization. International distributed teams becoming more and more prevalent. The impacts of our more connected global society. We're seeing that in what we're doing right now, talking live via video conferencing and working together on international teams is a really huge factor of why we need youth leaders. In our aging societies around the world, populations are aging in virtually every country. When I started looking at the research around this, I thought perhaps it was just the United States, but it's around the world. This is a global trend that we're seeing. And so why does this matter? Not because older people can't solve complex problems or can't help to work together to address some of these challenges, but because our populations are changing. They are changing to these older populations, and in the United States alone, the Americans ages 65 and older is projected to double from 52 million in 2018 to 95 million by 2060. And we're seeing that globally. And so that is going to change the needs and the requirements. And so youth leaders working to help some of the challenges of dealing with populations of this age and group around the world are going to be even more important. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some examples of youth leaders. Those were kind of just backgrounds on some of the challenges we face in our world, some of the grand challenges, some of the global threats, and some of the trends that I think are sort of impacting the need for youth leadership and why the world needs youth leaders, especially now. Let's talk about one example. Alex Scott, and I know that your teacher is very familiar with Alex Scott, and perhaps some of you are there as well. Mary, I forget if you've told me if these students know much about Alex, but just by a show of hands, how many of you know about Alex Scott? Okay. Most of you probably, right? So I think your school has been so active in working in the Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation and the Virtual Lemonade Stand project that you probably have, more of you have heard of Alex Scott than some other schools. Alex Scott was a little girl who got diagnosed with neuroblastoma shortly before her first birthday. And she faced this tremendous health issue and had the idea at one point, as she was closer to about 4 years old, that she was going to have a lemonade stand outside of her home. And she was going to try to raise money so that other children would not have to go through what she went through, and that she could help the doctors who were helping her and provide some resources and funding for helping to end childhood cancers. So she got her cups and made her lemonade, and you see the picture of her there, and sat outside on her front lawn to sell lemonade. And she had that fire, that entrepreneurial spirit to sort of make a difference and to raise money so that other children could benefit from her efforts. And Alex Scott, in my mind, really was one of the most amazing examples of youth leadership because of her young age. She was so committed to finding solutions and to ensuring that no other children would have to go through what she went through, that she wanted to do everything she possibly could to make a difference. And that's the kind of spirit of a youth leader that is so essential. But she had it in spades. Alex just had so much of that determination and drive. And by the time that she did, unfortunately, pass away from her disease, despite surgeries and attempts to help her, Alex had raised $1 million, and she had inspired a legacy of hope and opportunities for cures. And she started a movement. So more than anything, she started a movement that had tremendous impact on children around the world. Her parents, Liz and Jay Scott, were so moved by her dedication to start this movement that they created the foundation in 2005. And to this day, the foundation has raised over $200 million toward ending childhood cancer. And they funded nearly 1,000 research projects at 135 institutions. And all of that research and all of that fundraising and all of that awareness just helps the cause of fewer children having to go through what Alex went through herself. And that research is really moving in a direction of hopefully, someday finding a cure so that no other children will go through this. But it all started with Alex, and that really is her legacy. The foundation also supports important programs to help families that are struggling with childhood cancer, and they have their Travel for Care program and something called Super Sibs, where the siblings, the brothers and sisters of children who are going through these treatments, they have resources and programming available for the super sibs as well. And in addition to the foundation and the legacy that Alex left behind, one component of that is what we have done with the Alex's Virtual Lemonade Stand project, and what your school has been so instrumental in over these years. And your teacher, Mary, and everyone there has been so fantastic in this project. But this project was started by a local Philadelphia area school who knew Alex. It was in her school district. And they said, well, why can't we use video conferencing to create awareness about the foundation, about ending childhood cancer, to raise money and to create a service project? So we worked with the teachers and the instructional technology staff at that high school to put together the first Alex's Virtual Lemonade Stand using video conferencing technology and inviting schools around the world to participate, including your school. And the Virtual Lemonade Stand project really does try to encourage students running the show as the VJs. Some of you may have classmates who've participated as VJs, or maybe you have yourself. The VJs write the scripts for the kickoff. They handle the program, showcasing the lemonade stands that happen in each school and community, and talk about their fundraising successes, how much money they've raised, and what they're donating back to the foundation to help end childhood cancer. This project ran for many years. We did actually, we took a one-year hiatus last year, but we are restarting it in 2020 with new opportunities for you all. I know your teacher has many ideas, and hopefully you will all have many ideas and get involved in that project as well. We're really excited to do that again this year, and I look forward to working with all of you and with schools around the world to help raise money and to continue Alex's legacy. This next example is one where I wanted to sort of highlight the power of youth leaders through this very tragic and horrible example here in the United States. And I'm sure, or I believe that many of you have heard of what happened in Florida, in Parkland, with the mass shooting that took place there. And the survivors and the student classmates of those 17 victims have basically created a whole new movement and are changing gun policy and gun control awareness in the United States as a result of the horrible experience, the horrific experience that they went through, and their inability to not act, to not take action. They simply were not going to sit by any longer and let this happen to anyone else. They are fighting for their lives and marching for their lives and for students' lives around the world. And so I just put this image up here of Emma Gonzalez, one of the survivors, and she was at a ceremony honoring the victims, and she spoke their names and sat or stood on stage in silence for the time that the shooter was in the school. And it's so powerful that she has a voice and a platform to do that. I wish that she wouldn't have to, but of course, this is one of those grand challenges in our world, is that these kinds of things are happening, and what must we do to change that? And Emma is one of those youth leaders who is making a difference in changing that. Because of the actions of these students, and because they are unwilling and unable to just sit back and let this ever happen again, gun control safety laws are being passed, and new things are happening that are changing the way that we think about gun control here in the United States, and pass laws around gun control, and all of this so that hopefully, we pray that this will never happen again. And so they founded the Never Again movement, and they've raised millions of dollars and rallied hundreds of thousands to march again in Washington and around the world. This is a really important effort, again, led by young people who are making a difference in so many critical ways, in doing things that adults in our country I'm speaking, of course, about the US, but this is around the world as well. Adults weren't changing these laws. So the students stepped in because they had to, and they're making that difference as youth leaders and policy change agents. And it's hugely important in our world and our society. So I want to move from those examples to something a little more recent and something that I just find so wonderful and so fascinating. How many of you have heard of Wolf? I can't pronounce his last name, but we'll say Kukier, which probably isn't right. Have any of you heard of Wolf? Nobody? Okay, so here's a new one. So this young gentleman was on an internship program at NASA. You all know what NASA is, the National Space Agency here in the United States. So he was on an internship program. He had just finished his junior year in high school, and he was participating in this internship program. And 3 days into his internship program, he discovered a new planet. He discovered a planet that the senior scientists and the engineers and the experienced staff and employees at NASA had not found. But this young gentleman did in 3 days. And so the planet that he found has since been named TOI 1338b, and it's the first circumbinary planet to ever have been found at NASA. And it means that the planet orbits 2 stars instead of 1. This is a huge discovery in the science community. And this young man was on the internship for 3 days. So I put some of the data around NASA on here. There are over 3,000 full-time employees at NASA, and they are the best and the brightest in the country. There are 7,000 supporting contractors on site at NASA working on these types of challenges and problems every day. It is truly one of the highest concentrations of premier scientists and engineers, but none of them found this planet. Wolf did 3 days into his internship program. So the power of that, to my mind, is that we need youth leadership. We need youth eyes on old problems, on old research, on things that have been looked at, and we think that they've been looked at in all the different possible ways, and no stone has been unturned, and we've tried and we've looked and we've researched, but it just takes fresh eyes and fresh vision to come in and see something just a little bit differently. So I think this example is so incredibly powerful. Another interesting aspect of the example that I've presented with Wolf is that he uses citizen science. And part of what happened here was that he was doing this scrutinizing data that came in through something called TESS. So TESS is an example of citizen science initiative, and it encourages regular citizens to volunteer and watch for transmission patterns in the star brightness that might suggest the existence of a new planet. TESS has been around for several years, and there's other examples of these types of things. But more and more, if we're able to use citizen science and put sort of some of the science and the research in the hands of the non-scientist, the average person, no matter what age, it could be a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 17-year-old, or, a 94-year-old, put some of these science resources and data sets and tools into the hands of folks who can use them in new and exciting ways. This is part of how Wolf was able to do this. And I think that's an important piece of it. But so much nowadays is available and online because of our highly connected world that you can use these types of tools. And there are so many citizen science initiatives that you can get involved in. So this next example, and I hope many of you are familiar with Greta, I am just so incredibly, I feel so honored and lucky to be in a time when someone like Greta exists in the world. If you've read anything about her, or if you've seen anything about her, Greta could not believe the inaction of the adult leaders in her country. She was astonished that more was not being done to solve our climate crisis, to make changes in our policies and our laws around the world and where she was from in Sweden. And so she literally just sat outside the Swedish parliament, and she started her school strike for climate by spending her school days sitting outside the parliament until someone took notice. But because of her determination and commitment, she has inspired others around the world. So not just in her own country or in Europe, but worldwide. And she and her determination have started a movement called Fridays for Future. And around the world, students strike for climate change, and they protest with signs, and they are outside and leading ways that we can change the trajectory that we're on with regards to our climate. So I really see that Greta has made such an amazing impact at such a young age, but it took her vision and her leadership and her unwillingness to stand by idly and let this just happen. And I put this up here because Time Magazine, as you may know, has made her Person of the Year. And this quote, I think, speaks exactly to why it's so important to have youth leadership. And I'll just take a moment to read it. For decades, researchers and activists have struggled to get world leaders to take the climate threat seriously. But this year, an unlikely teenager somehow got the world's attention. It's so powerful. And this is the power that youth leaders have because they are grabbing attention in areas where adults weren't paying attention before, in these tremendously important areas like our climate and the climate crisis. So those were some examples of youth leaders. I apologize for not having more examples from around the world. Next time I speak with you all, I'll have more examples, or perhaps you can share your favorite examples of some youth leaders. But I wanted to give you a few of what I thought were good examples. So let's transition into a discussion about the qualities of youth leadership. I put a few up here: courage, confidence, critical thinking, communication, strong values, open-mindedness. But I wanted to take a pause and maybe just open it up, if we have time, Mary, to ask your students, what qualities do you think are essential for youth leaders? Are there other qualities that aren't on here?
Okay, so could we give them 1 or 2 minutes to discuss in groups?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so we have a short breakout session, 2 minutes.
Yes, perfect, thank you.
Okay, here we go. So we have done a few brainstorming ideas, and students want to share those with you.
Great, thank you.
So what other characteristics or qualities do you think that youth leaders should have in addition to those here listed? Yeah, go.
Interpersonal relationship.
Did you get that? Okay,
Interpersonal relationship, yeah. I agree.
Again? Execution, the ability to execute the ideas.
Great.
Influential.
Influential, to be influential. Influential, okay.
Leader goal.
Okay. Clear goals, clear goal in mind. Yeah. Optimism. Yeah.
Unbreakable will.
Unbreakable will, okay. Relentless, right? Unrelenting. Yeah. Resilience. Anybody else? Anything else? Okay, so what do you think?
I think that's a fantastic list. Wonderful, great job. That's really wonderful. I think those characteristics are really excellent suggestions of some of the qualities. I heard optimism, interpersonal relationships, I think unbreakable will. That was such a great list. I think that really adds to some of the qualities. And we could go on and on. There's so many different qualities of youth leaders. Some of them are not so different from adult leaders, right? But some of them may have a little bit of a slightly youth-oriented skew, but they're all sort of the same qualities that are needed to sort of take action, right? And I think that's a huge part of it. Thank you for your contributions to that. That's great. So the next thing I wanted to do is really, we could come up with a list of all of the different qualities that a youth leader could have. But honestly, it all boils down to a couple of key things, right? So what can you do? This is very broadly speaking. You don't have to have all of those qualities and characteristics to be a youth leader. Really, what you need to do is show up. And you're doing that now. You're showing up for class or for camp. This is such an underlooked piece of things sometimes, to just be present and to show up for a discussion, for an event, to bring yourself to an event is essential. And it can be so simple, but you must show up. And you can interpret that in many different ways. But very simply stated, show up. Speak up, right? So you all just contributed to the discussion. You don't sit back and not contribute. Speak up, speak your mind and share your voice is really important. Don't be afraid that the answer is wrong or it's silly or somebody said it already. Show up, speak up, challenge. I want to encourage you to challenge even your authority figures, especially sometimes your authority figures. Be respectful, of course, but challenge that thinking, because that's where I think we have this really exciting opportunity for young people and youth leaders to, in a respectful fashion, challenge the status quo and to challenge the assumptions of the establishment, of leadership. And that's where you saw those examples that I pulled. Challenge the norm. Don't do what has always been done before. Do it different. Bring your different voice and your different perspective and challenge the old ways, because that's where I think really exciting things will happen. And get involved, act, so you show up and you speak up and you challenge, and then do something, right? Do anything, but act and move something forward in a way that is true to who you are and what you find important. So that's the broad brush approach to what you can do as a youth leader. And you can really boil it down to even just that. But if you want to take some smaller steps or some sample smaller actions, there's so many, and our list could go on and on. Participate on student council or in student government. Volunteer to be a section lead or a performance lead in a group. Serve as a camp counselor or a camp leader. Get involved in a local civic program or through a religious group, in the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, different religious groups and different leadership opportunities. There are so many ways to get involved, and each one presents a new opportunity for you to demonstrate your skills and the characteristics that you have and your unique voice that you bring to the world. So I think, Mary, I may be at time, or maybe a little over, I apologize, but I want to leave you with this message. It all starts with you, each and every one of you. And what will you do to lead and to make a difference and share your voice in your community and your country and your world? And with that, thank you so much. I'm happy to take any questions or further discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much. To start by saying that I'm very glad that you brought up serving as a camp counselor, because we have these wonderful students who are now in universities around Taiwan. Some are even in the past few years, they came back from abroad because they are studying overseas to help at these camps. So let's give them a round of applause. 感谢学长姐启动，他们都是最棒的领袖。就是很棒的一个领袖，就是你在青年方面，你就是已经站出来，你愿意做事情。And also another thing you mentioned about mega conference, I mentioned this idea and how we have achieved the things that we have achieved in the past, and some educators are actually very interested in reviving this program, but we weren't sure if we could do that, and B, we could still maybe keep the Mega Conference Junior name or something like that. So this is one of the things that, I wanted to bring it up, so that we could maybe proceed, because I have universities in Taiwan, prestigious ones, and they are interested in assisting me if possible, or perhaps we can use that model, but with a different name. I don't know if anything will be, if we will be doing anything illegal, in terms of, these rights and things like that. And also a teacher in Croatia, maybe you've heard of her, Susanna. She's also interested in reviving this program. So, yeah.
Mary, I think that's wonderful. I would be more than happy to work with you on that. And we've talked about it in some of the folks who were involved in the early Mega Conference and Mega Conference Junior. As you know, there have been some staff changes. So Dr. Bob Dixon stepped down and retired from Ohio State University. Some of the staff changes within the leadership team that was running Mega Conference Junior at the time. So there would be no concern about using the name. For Mega Conference Junior, we would be delighted if it was revived under the name of Mega Conference Junior, and you and Susanna and whoever else might want to take a lead in starting that fresh and new and putting some new vision and energy around that. And I would love to work with you on that. So let's talk about that when we talk about some plans for how we're going to improve Alex's virtual lemonade stand for 2020 as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I was thinking of new ideas for Alex's lemonade stand, because with the technology and everything, the trend, I think a lot of the teenagers, the things that they are interested in have been shifting. So perhaps we can, move along with the trend, and also use that for our, charitable events and all the good causes.
Definitely, that sounds great. And we want to get student voices contributing to the changes as well. So wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm not going to take up too much time. So perhaps I don't want to take up too much of your time. So could we take a few questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I don't want to be in your way if you're in a hurry to be elsewhere.
No, I'm actually traveling for work, so I'm in my hotel room. So I have nothing. I would be watching the news if we weren't doing this. So please ask questions. It would be great.
Okay, so Director Oxenford will be taking questions right now. So any question regarding leadership, management, youth leaders, you're more than welcome to ask a question right now. So think about that.
And if there are no questions, Mary, that's
Yeah.
fine too.
Yeah, my students love questions.
Oh, okay.
What if what if the more seniors people underrest the youth leaders? What can we do to convince them that we are really the leader that can lead the people that we that in our groups? I mean, what can we do to convince the elders that don't believe the youth leaders?
Oh, so what can students do to convince elders that don't see the power of youth leadership or don't believe in? I hope you don't encounter too many of those, actually. I hope that most people who are older than you think that you have so much to contribute, because I know that you do. So I guess, like anything, when you as a youth leader hit a challenge or an obstacle, if you're finding a more senior or elder person that you're working with who doesn't think you should have as much power or as much of a voice, I would recommend that you respectfully show them otherwise, and show them that you in fact have opinions and voices, and can make changes that really matter. So with the utmost respect, you can disagree with someone who says, your opinion doesn't matter. Hopefully they don't say that, but if they do, you should by all means stand up to them, respectfully, of course. But
Okay, thank you.
Another one? Yeah.
How can we do to establish the strong values to be a good leader? How can we do?
can you
Because
repeat?
how can we do to establish the strong value to be a good leader?
Oh, establish a strong value to be a good leader. Yeah.
Had some difficulties in our class. Yeah.
So if I'm understanding the question, is it how to establish the values to be a good leader?
Yeah, in an area like our class. Yeah.
In your class? Oh, well, in your class, I would defer to your teacher to help guide you through that best. I don't know that I could in your classroom, but I know that your teacher is so wonderful that she's giving you opportunities for leadership. But perhaps it's other classes that you're speaking of.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mary, maybe I didn't understand that question as well as I should. Did I miss a piece of that, or?
Maybe we can circle back to that later.
Okay.
Okay. How do you think about the most important part to be a leader?
Can you say that a little louder? I'm sorry.
Okay. So, how do you think about the most important part to be a leader?
Oh, what do
What
I
do you
think
think
is
is
most important
Yeah.
to be a leader?
Yeah.
The most important. I think it's at some level a combination of sort of personal integrity and a vision, right? So you are true to yourself and your values, and you bring that to all that you do and your vision for how to lead others. Right? So to me, the most effective leaders are those that combine that, their moral compass and their integrity with their vision of what should be different or how things should be and should be led, working with other people. So I don't know if that is a good, elegant answer. I apologize, but that's my answer.
Thank you.
I'm going to do a big translation.
Yeah.
啊，是真诚正直的人，然后再来就是要有愿景 ，vision 是指愿景，要愿景。Any more questions? We're running out of time, so we can take 1 to 2 more questions. Yeah, go ahead. Or you? Yeah.
I know the generation of our this generation information can spread very fast, even something that is incorrect. So I learned that now USA has some problem that why bricks from Nixon spread very fast by the internet, so that student affected by the white from Nixon. So I want to ask, what do you think we can do to avoid white from Nixon, or some ability that we can determine these things? Yeah. Determine.
So there was one word you said that I'm not sure I caught. Either I'm not hearing it right. Could you ask it? Could you ask it again? Because I'm not sure I got the full question. I'm sorry to make you repeat it. But.
Okay. In USA now, the white supremacism spread very fast by the internet. So what can we teenagers do to avoid these things or determine these things?
So that was the word, the widespread. What was the word after widespread?
Widespread supremacism.
White supremacy.
Oh. Thank you. Okay, that is a very important piece of your question that I didn't know what you were asking. Yes. Yeah. So the question is, in the United States, the prevalence of white supremacy is something that you are concerned about, as you should be. And what can you do? Is that kind of the question? Did I get that?
And its influence on teenagers? Is that right?
Oh.
Yeah, it's influence on teenagers.
Oh. In the United States or around the world or?
Do you think it's influencing also around the world?
Yeah. Also affects us.
Yeah, so they also feel affected.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you for your question. I don't have good solution to it. I'm still, frankly, I still struggle with the fact that these groups exist and that they believe what they believe. I like to think that they are less in number than they are, but the reality is that they do still exist and they do still have influence, and there are certain factors in the United States right now that may even be making that even more prevalent, unfortunately. I think we in the United States specifically have a race issue. We We have still very deep racial issues. And of course, today, maybe not of course, but today is a national holiday in the United States celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his efforts as a civil rights activist. And it's amazing to me that we still have these issues, and yet we do. It's actually only been a very short time in the United States that some of these changes have happened. And so, you know, it's only been a few decades, and we want it to be better and we want it not to be an issue. But the sad reality is that we are still struggling with it as a country and as people. We have a lot to resolve still. And I think that the what we can do part is to be respectful and tolerant of other people and their opinions, but not to allow hatred to exist or to manifest itself in policies or in, actions by a government, or, you know, not to condone those. So I wish I had an easier answer for you. I think that, you know, you know, I'm sorry that it is not solved yet, and we're working on it, but it is complicated.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a very good answer, actually. You were put on the spot. That was wonderful. I mean, sorry for that challenge.
It's okay.
Okay.
I wish
One
I
last job. Well, you did a very good job. Yeah.
You just talk a lot about the personality that youth leaders around the world have. But I was wondering, how can we, if we don't have those personality, how can we gather?
Yeah. So I believe you have it. You don't. Whatever we put on that list, and all of the wonderful characteristics and traits, some examples. Those are just a few possibilities. I believe that each and every one of us has that inside of us, and I believe you have it. And I believe that that's why I put that list together. That was very, very simple. Show up, go to class, you know, show up to a discussion or a meeting about something that is important to you. That's thing one. It doesn't even have to do with any of the qualities or characteristics. Just be present and bring yourself to a discussion about race, or about inequality that you see, or something that you care about that's personal to you. Show up and then, you know, contribute in whatever way. So I believe that you have those qualities, each and every one of you, and you will take your unique strengths and your unique voice and vision, and you will all do amazing and wonderful things.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And that's all the time we have for today. And Jennifer, thank you so much. That was wonderful. You really rocked this.
I'm so glad. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you all tonight and today. It was really just my pleasure. Mary, I did put some resources in the slides, so I'll send these to you so that you have the links if your students want to explore any information further. But thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your camp and your day, and I look forward to the next time we have a video conference. Thank you.
Yes, we'll be doing more collaborations very soon.
Good.
Okay. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye bye.